my name's Alex and I'm going to be teaching you guys how to pickle garlic today. I have pickled garlic in the past, however this is my second attempt and I'm doing things a bit differently, but I'll explain it all for you guys as we go along. The first thing before we even start anything pickling wise is you need to get your mason jars and we need to sterilize them. Sterilized mason jars, you just need hot water. So what I normally do is I put them in my dishwasher and let that run, and that does the job. So make sure you do that in preparation for pickling. I wanted to talk to you guys about a pickling kit. When I went into this, I was really unsure of how to go. Originally, Skipper taught me and he already had all of his supplies. So I went ahead and went on Amazon and found a beginner canning kit. Came with a bunch of stuff. So this beginner kit, it comes with this little funnel here. It collapses, easy storage, and it comes with a multitude of tongs. This version here, which helps with the whole tighten the can if you have problems with that. And then it comes with the most important thing that you need. If you don't want to get this kit, you need this, is canning tongs. How you seal your pickle jars is through water. And to do that, you have to bring it to a boil. So those cans are really, really hot. So you want to make sure you have tongs like this so that way you can get your jars out of the water without burning yourself, hurting yourself, or having to wait an insane time for that pot to cool down, okay? The next thing that's also extremely important in this kit is this little guy here. I know he doesn't look like much, but he is much. Another way and important step into your sealing process is you actually put your little snap lids in a pot to boil. That way the rubber's loose and will fully lock in on that jar whenever you do the water sealing process. But to get those little lids out while they're still hot and in the boiling water, this guy here. It has a little magnet on the end, so you can just pick up the lids out of the water without worrying about burning yourself. They cool off in seconds as soon as they're pulled out of the water. And then lastly, it comes with this, which most people use. It's a little basket that you insert into a pot. However, I don't have a pot big enough for this basket yet. So, an alternative, if you don't want that basket and you just want to get the canning tongs, we have this guy. This guy here is, I believe, a seafood boil pot. What makes him so unique is on the inside there's a little lip. That lip holds this tray. You insert the tray and then you can put your cans in the boiling water. A very important thing to know about the sealing process is you don't want your cans immediately in the pot with the boiling water. You can't have that jar touching the pot. It just causes it to break. It doesn't cause the sealing process to work properly, so you need that gap of space. To achieve that gap of space with the seafood boil, it creates another layer. So you fill it up with the water that you need, put your jars in, and it's not directly on the bottom of that pot. Same thing with that basket, you just set it on the edges of your pot and it holds it in there without having it all the way to the bottom of the pot. That's extremely important. While all of your jars are sterilizing, you can go ahead and get started on the brine. So, to make the pickling brine, it's really easy. You just need 3 ingredients. First, you need distilled water. This is very important. Distilled water helps with the preservation process and it helps with any pickling issues, chemical-wise, especially with garlic. Garlic reacts to a lot of chemicals, so you want to make sure to have that distilled water. I will say I have done it with just regular water before and it's turned out fine, but it is best to do distilled water because it maintains the preserving process. You also need pickling salt. That's another thing. I have done it before with regular salt and it gets the job done. It's just not as salty of a pickle taste as you may be used to. So I do recommend using that pickling salt. And then lastly, you'll need vinegar. Simple, nice and easy. Now there are 2 portions in which I know how to make pickling brine. I normally go for the larger size. However, I will also tell you the smaller size. Okay, for the large batch of brine, you're gonna need 24 cups of distilled water. You're gonna need 4 cups of vinegar and 16 tablespoons of pickling salt. Now for the smaller batch portion, you're gonna need 1/2 cup of vinegar, 3 cups of water, distilled water, make sure it's distilled, and 2 tablespoons of pickling salt. Okay, now to start the brine, we're gonna need 24 cups of distilled water. So I'm gonna do that. You get the gist. Now that we have our 24 cups of water, distilled water, we're gonna go ahead and add our 4 cups of vinegar. Now that we have our 4 cups of vinegar, it's time for the last bit, which is 16 tablespoons of salt. Now that you have your 16 tablespoons of salt in your pot, you're gonna go ahead and put it on about medium to high heat to bring this to a boil. Now, as you can see here, the water is no longer foggy. I can't see any more salt down at the bottom, which means it's all been dissolved. So I'm gonna go ahead and do is turn it off. I'm gonna move it over to the side, and I'm gonna let that cool. Now we're gonna go prep our ingredients, but before you do that, make sure you wash your hands. While you're waiting for your brine to cool down before we start the whole canning, jarring process, whatever you want to refer to as, it's time to know what ingredients you're gonna need to put into the jars. I do have some optional ingredients, however, personally I prefer all of them, so it's up to you, okay? To start off, you're gonna need mustard seeds. You're also gonna need some celery seeds, as well as some whole black peppercorn. And then normally I get this fresh, but because it is kind of off season, I went ahead and just bought it. Dill. Now, as for the optional bit is, I do add 2 ingredients, ginger and jalapenos. Personally, I like my things spicy, so I get jalapenos for that purpose. If you don't like spice, I would highly recommend staying away from this, but that is completely up to you. As for the ginger, I don't prefer super strong ginger taste, however, it does add another element to the pickled garlic, and a lot of people honestly recommend ginger with their pickled garlic, so I said, hey, why not? And it turned out pretty good. So, as I was saying, you're gonna need your ginger. I personally get 2 jalapenos. Probably not gonna use all of them, but just in case, I got 2. And then the big you can't do this without it, is your garlic. Now I went ahead and got 8 bulbs of garlic. At H-E-B, they have a deal where it's, I believe, 2 bulbs for $1, so it cost me a total of $4, really inexpensive. And honestly, the amount of garlic you need depends on how much you wanna fill your jars up and how many jars you're making. First, we're gonna start with the garlic, the most annoying, most tedious part. So you have to peel all of this garlic, and then after we peel it, we have to do a process called blanching, which I'll get to. So first things first, you want to lay all your garlic out. I use the produce bag they give me as a trash bag, that way I don't have to run back and forth or worry about a mess. You're also probably going to want to get a bowl, so that way you can put the peeled garlic in there in preparation. So first things first, you grab a bowl, as so. I normally start peeling it by pulling it right from that little tail, and you get a pretty good start in the dent. Some people roll it. I haven't found much success with rolling it myself. I also worry about it squishing them, so I never really do all of that. As you can see here, we have a lot of cloves that need to be peeled. However, we still have all of these. So to make the process a bit faster, I do go ahead and get all of these peeled. I'm gonna do that real quick. Okay, now that all of our garlic bulbs have been peeled and are individual now, we have to do the fun part of peeling all the skin off of them. Normally when you're cooking, you normally just like crack it and then peel it and you're good to put it in, but we do need to preserve the shape since we're pickling them. So what I have found to work best for me is get a knife. There's two ends. I normally go for this end here because it's normally harder anyway, so I don't prefer to have that bit since it's the bit that connects to the root. So you take that side and you cut through just like that. Now you have like this. From there, you can start to peel the skin off of the garlic. Then sometimes I grab the top, I wiggle it, and it rips right off. There may be little bits that are still on there. Just make sure you get those all off. And there, you have peeled garlic. Now another way to do this is you go here and you cut through and you leave a little lip on it, and then you can use that lip to guide you in peeling it. There you go, peeled garlic. That's really the most annoying part, is peeling all of these individual garlics, but it is something you have to do for a beautiful experience with pickled garlic. So I'm gonna be right back and I'm gonna do this. Okay, now that I've finished peeling all of my garlic, I am gonna set that to the side so that way I don't have to think about it for a little bit till the next process. Now that that's done, I am gonna go ahead and start cutting some of this ginger root. Something to note is you can peel it if you want to. However, I'm not going to. It's completely up to you. Some people do, some people don't. It works the same way either way. It just depends on if you want to take that extra step. Personally, I'm fine with it on there. So I'm gonna leave the skin on my ginger. I'm gonna break off that arm right there. And I'm just gonna go ahead and cut up all of this one. Cut as much as you want and for how many jars you're making. I'm gonna end up making, I believe it is 13 jars, so I'm gonna cut about 13 pieces. Okay, that's all my ginger. And the last thing we need to cut is gonna be the jalapenos. Now, like I said earlier, I got 2, however, I'm probably only gonna end up using 1. So for now, I'm just gonna take the smaller of the 2, rinse it off, and cut this up. You can honestly cut this however you want. Some people cut it down this way and then cut it into pieces. Some people just cut it whole. Personally, I'm just gonna cut it whole. You've finished prepping all of your fresh ingredients for your jars. Now, to do the last step for the garlic. What you're gonna do is you're gonna have your garlic. There's mine. And you're gonna blanch it. Before I do the next step, I think it's important to let you know about blanching. Blanching isn't gonna change the flavor of the garlic. It's just gonna stop this chemical reaction from happening. Now that you have all of your garlic in this pot, we need to fill it with cold water. Specifically, it has to be cold water. Now that you got your cold water, you're gonna go ahead and put your burner on about medium heat and bring it to a boil. As soon as it starts boiling, we're gonna go ahead and drain it in the sink and repeat this process. Now, while we're waiting for that water to boil while blanching those garlic, we can go ahead and start prepping each of our little jars. I'm not going the traditional route for this tutorial. However, I will be showing you how to do it traditionally alongside this, specifically filling the jar wise. But I will be using green beans in that traditional one versus these little ones. As you can see here, they're smaller, just little sample sizes, because I have friends who want to try pickled things but don't feel confident enough. So this is kind of like a sampler for them versus this is like the traditional jar in which you would use. Now, all of our things have been sterilized. All of our jar and lids have been sterilized as well. The only thing left for the lids will be heat treating these here, which I referred to earlier, the little snap lids. Called that because they make that snapping noise. Shows you the sealant, okay? So we're first gonna start out with some celery seeds. Now, I don't have any exact measurements for it. It's just kind of up to you. A lot of people recommend doing like 1 teaspoon or 1 tablespoon in a traditional jar, 1 teaspoon in these. But I do eyeball mine. Next, you're gonna do your mustard seeds. Once again, recommends about 1 tablespoon if you're doing the traditional size, 1 teaspoon if you're doing these smaller ones. It also depends on if you like more of that mustard flavor. Personally, I do, so. The last dry seasoning, whole black peppercorn. This one, I'm gonna be real, I also eyeball it. I would say closer to a teaspoon than a tablespoon. Just because these can be a bit stronger. And the biggest thing that you'll learn about pickling is it all really just depends on what you prefer. I'll be right back. The garlic has started to boil. Now that that garlic is boiling, I'm gonna go ahead, take it off the heat, pour it out. Then, you put some more cold water in this pot. Take your garlic, pour it back into the pot. You're then gonna take this back over, bring it to a boil 2 more times, and then you're done. So you're boiling it a total of 3 times. Back to jarring. We've finished doing all of our dry ingredients, so the celery, the mustard, and the whole peppercorn. Now we're gonna go ahead and put our dill. I already pre-washed mine. You're normally gonna want about, obviously minimum 1 dill per jar. However, I normally do 2 to 3. And in the big jar, I do a whole handful, to be honest with you. And since my dill is so large and I'm using smaller jars, I am gonna break off those ends and then put it in. I'm doing about 3 little stalks for each small jar. Next, we're gonna go ahead and add in our ginger. Now, lastly, our jalapenos. Something I realized I forgot to mention is if you do like it spicy, but you don't want it to be super spicy and you're also going the jalapeno route, I would get rid of a lot of these seeds just so you don't die from heat. Since these are smaller, I am gonna take out a lot of the seeds. And that is all of our inserts that just help with flavoring. Now it's time for the big guys, but we're still waiting on the blanching of that garlic. While we're waiting, a couple notes to know before you start filling. On your jar here, there's this lip here. You never want to fill your jar over that lip. The reason for is when you put all of your food items in here along with the brine, it's gonna sit for about 2 weeks to a month or longer if you really prefer that. And while it's doing that, it's gonna sort of expand, so you wanna make sure it has enough room for that expansion. Now that all of your garlic has been blanched, it is time to fill up your jars. Now, I don't know about you, but my garlic are absolutely humongous, so put as many as you can in your jar. Now that we have all of our ingredients in here, I also went ahead and added a garlic to the green beans. We can begin pouring in our brine. You want to fill it all the way up to that lip. Okay, now that you've done all this, we can go ahead and do our final itty bitty step before we start water sealing. Back over here, we have our small pot that we used for blanching. We're gonna go ahead and use it for the last step in preparation for water seal. So we're gonna go ahead, turn on the stovetop. We wanna get this to simmer or boil just enough to heat up that little rubber band around the snap lid. While this is waiting to boil, I'm gonna go ahead and fill up my large pot for the canning process. You do want either your basket or how I have it, you do want your jars to still be in water at least a quarter to halfway. So make sure to fill it up, accounting for that. Now that it's boiling, you're gonna take your gadget that I mentioned earlier for getting the lids. And go ahead, grab a lid, preferably one if possible. Take it out, shake it, set it on to your jar, press it in, take your lid, and you're gonna seal it. You don't need to do it super tight, you just need to close it. All of my lids have been canned and put to the side. It's good to turn off this here and get rid of the water. And go ahead, take our pot, whichever pot you're using. Mine makes scary creaky noises, but I promise it's fine. And then you're gonna go ahead, start your water, and bring this to a boil. Okay, now that your water is boiling, you're gonna go ahead and get that other tool I was talking about at the beginning, the little canning jar. How it works is it just grips right around your jar, just like that. And you're gonna go ahead and place as many of your jars in here as you can. There you go. So, you got as many jars in there as you can. You're gonna take the lid to your pot. You're gonna go ahead and cover that. I'm gonna lower my heat just a little bit. I don't need it that high. And I'm gonna set a timer for 15 minutes. Okay. Now that our timer is done, we're gonna go ahead, turn the timer off, and using that tool again, we're gonna go ahead and take out all of our dough. You want to be careful when doing this just because it is hot water and hot glass. I do need to go ahead and do another batch. So, go ahead and set all of my remaining jars in here. Okay. Close that, set another timer for 15 minutes. Okay, and while that's going, you will hear little pops from the other jars. That is okay, that's just telling you that those are sealing. So I'm gonna let these go and then I'll meet you when everything's done. Now that you've gone ahead and water sealed all of your pickle jars, you're gonna go ahead and put today's date on them. That way you know in 2 weeks time when you're good to open it, or a month's time, you know you're good to open it. So you can't just use a Sharpie, that's just the basic simple way. If you wanna be fancy, that kit that I was telling you about does come with these labels, which are also fun. For now, since these already have little date spots, I'm just gonna put today's date. And there you have it. With that being said, all of your steps are complete. You've pickled, you're good. You can go ahead and either put these in your fridge. If you don't want to do that, you can also leave them out. That is perfectly fine. They are water sealed tight in here. They're preserved. They're not going to go bad. So just make sure to leave them alone. I recommend a minimum of 2 weeks. I will say they're not super strong after 2 weeks. It's kind of like a muted pickle flavor. I personally always go for a month's waiting period. I know it's kind of annoying to wait that long and sometimes you forget about it, but it honestly, in my opinion, tastes better after a month. But like I said, you can wait 2 weeks. I have some friends who prefer it not as pickly flavored, so I always recommend them just have it for 2 weeks. So you're all set, you've done. And then what you can do with your leftover brine is, like I said, put it in a big jar like I have done and just label it, and you're good to use that next time you pickle. I do recommend always pickling in bulk. That way you can share the wealth, as I like to put it. Consider taking some pickle jars down to the community center for people, or to the fire station, they work hard for us, or to friends like I'm doing here with the little mini samples, whatever. Just share pickling, it's a fun hobby.